We stopped sharing the same weather. That's how it felt, anyway. We lived under one roof, slept under one duvet, but the climate around her was spring, green shoots, new projects, late evening light, while mine was a long, serviceable winter. I didn't mind winter. Winter is predictable. You put your head down, you work, you come home tired, you eat, you rest. The problem is that spring never waits. Her name is Laura. 12 years married, 3 apartments, 2 cars, and one promise we both said too quickly at 25. We'll always be dishonest. It sounded noble. It also turned out to be work. Somewhere along the way, we decided to outsource the hard parts to silence. When I took the promotion 2 years ago, I told myself it was for us. Better salary, better title, a sense that I wasn't coasting. The commute got longer. The emails grew teeth. I started coming home with my jaw aching from clenching. She would try to tell me about her day, and I would nod, listening the way people listen to hold music, kind, but absent. She noticed, even if she didn't call it out. Laura is observant in a way that never needed words. She could read my exhaustion like a headline. The cracks were small, hairline, easy to step over. Date night became takeout night, and then, we'll figure it out next week. We did not figure it out. On Sundays, she'd ask, "Want to try the art exhibit?" And I'd say, "Maybe next weekend." "Quarter close is insane." After the third, "Maybe next weekend," she stopped asking. I told myself I missed the exhibit. I didn't admit that I missed the version of me that would have gone. She works in marketing at a nonprofit, the kind of job that requires optimism and spreadsheets. She used to come home with stories about donors who started as skeptics and ended as partners, about campaigns that made people cry at just the right second. "It's not manipulation," she'd say. "It's reminding people they're still soft under the armor." I liked that line. Lately, her stories grew shorter, trimmed into bullet points. When I pressed, she'd shrug. "It's the same as always." But she started dressing with that careful effort you make when you're trying to impress yourself, or someone who notices the difference. New blazer. The old perfume from when we first dated, faint at first, then steady. A phone kept face down, not like a secret, but like a habit. We still had decent days. There was a Saturday in late spring when we biked to the park, bought lemonade from a cart, and argued cheerfully about the names of the trees. We laughed, and I thought, okay, we're fine. See? We're fine. There was also the night in early autumn when we went to dinner with friends and watched them bicker, hands clenched around cutlery, and we drove home quiet with relief that we weren't them. But underneath our calm, something was settling, silt in a glass of water, drifting until it obscured the bottom. I'd be lying if I said I didn't contribute. I brought home my bad moods like vintage finds and set them in the middle of the room, pleased with their weight. I corrected Laura about small facts during conversations, actually this and technically that, not because accuracy mattered but because control felt like competence. When my father had his health scare last year, I never told her how scared I was. I told her the test results and asked her to pass the salt. She waited for the rest of the sentence that didn't arrive. We tried a little. She sent me a link to a counselor whose face looked kind. "A few sessions just to tune up," she said. I told her I didn't have time right now, but maybe at the start of the quarter. I used the same tone you use for, "I'll schedule the dentist." She dropped it, not because she didn't care, but because she'd learned that pushing me made me dig in. As the year turned, tiny differences started to collect around her like pollen. Laura began leaving for work 10 minutes earlier, with energy I didn't recognize. Not mania, not nervousness, just a hum. She started taking evening yoga on Wednesdays when she used to go Tuesdays and Thursdays. "They added a better class," she said, and smiled in a way that asked me not to make this administrative. She lingered longer over the mirror, not to chase youth, but to adjust the impression. I noticed a new playlist on our shared account, songs we liked when we were first dating, along with a few I didn't recognize. They were upbeat, but not careless. I told myself she was recentering. It's a word I'd picked up at work. One night in late March, I came home early by accident. A meeting canceled, an earlier train. The apartment had that clean, warm smell of laundry and something citrus. Music was playing quietly, not loud, like for performance, but present. Laura was on the couch with her laptop, a mug tucked into her knees the way she always sat when she was planning something. Her face was lit in the blue way screens make everyone look a little hopeful. She didn't hear me at first. I watched her body relax into a smile that was private, an expression I hadn't seen in a while. Not a secret, exactly. More like a conversation that had its own gravity. She looked up and startled, then grinned. "Hey, Early," she said, and patted the cushion beside her. I sat. She angled the screen away, not coy, more like the way you move a book when someone sits next to you. "How was the day?" she asked. I gave her the 3-sentence version. "You?" I said. She told me about a new initiative at work, a partnership with a tech firm that wanted to fund a storytelling campaign. "We'll have real case studies, not stage stuff. It could be good." She rolled that last word in her mouth, tasting it. I asked who was leading it. She exhaled a small laugh. "We all are, supposedly," she said. "But Michael's pushing the strategy. You remember Michael, right? Used to be at ClearPath." The name was a hook I couldn't quite place. "Tall, quiet, sharp with numbers," she added. My brain offered an image of a man in a crisp shirt from a holiday party a few years back, smiling in a way that made him look both shy and certain. That night, we made pasta together. It felt almost domestic in the way people post online to prove they are. We negotiated space at the counter. She salted the water more than I do. I teased her for it. She told me I underseason everything. We brushed shoulders and didn't apologize. We ate on the couch, bowls balanced on knees, and watched 2 episodes of a show we pretended to love equally, but she liked more. When we went to bed, we lay on our backs like commas, a small curve, close but not touching. I thought, remember this? We can still do this. I also thought, she said Michael like she had just remembered the right word. From then on, the signs weren't dramatic, just steady. The perfume bottle on the dresser lightened faster. A new lipstick appeared, subtle, the sort of shade people call "your lips but better." Our calendar got edited. Her yoga blocks moved. A "working late" flagged here and there. A Saturday afternoon marked "volunteer event." She left a cardigan draped over the back of a dining chair, and when I picked it up the sleeves smelled like outside air and the inside of a bookstore. These are the kinds of details you only register when your stomach is already braced. I didn't check her phone. Not from nobility, from cowardice. I was afraid of turning the thing I feared into something with proof. Instead, I watched how she laughed on her way out the door. I watched the way she answered questions with more patience than before, the way her voice softened when she was talking to someone she respected. I noticed my own reflection in the microwave door one morning, a man in a tie, eyebrows gathered, carrying 2 travel mugs like offerings. I didn't look like the person she used to choose. I didn't look like the person I wanted to be. There were tiny reprieves. On a rainy Tuesday, the subway stalled and she texted me. "Stuck underground. Send a song recommendation?" I sent her the one from our second date, the one that made us both say, "this part," at the same time. She sent back a heart and a "God, I forgot about this." For the rest of the day I felt like I had a secret talisman in my pocket. But that night, when she got home, her mind was already in another room. I don't mean with someone else. I mean with a version of herself she could not easily retrieve. We had a small fight about towels, the dumb domestic proxy for bigger things. "You always leave them in a heap," she said, and I said, "You always make it about a character flaw." The word always lodged between us like a doorstop. After, I went to the balcony and pretended to check the weather, breathing the cold until my anger cooled to something I could pocket. She came out with an apology that hovered. We didn't resolve anything, but we both agreed to be gentler. Gentleness, I've learned, can be a way to delay honesty. When my boss suggested a 3-day offsite, I almost declined out of habit. Then I thought about Laura's face on the couch, lit with that purposeful joy, and I said yes without asking if she wanted me home that weekend. "Of course," she said when I told her. "Do it." Her tone was supportive, not relieved. Still on the plane, I felt the dull ache of having made a solo decision about a shared life. By the time spring leaned toward summer, our bedroom looked staged for an open house, neutral, tidy, stripped of personal mess. We still slept in the same bed, but it was logistics. If I reached for her, she reached back, but the reaching felt like remembering choreography. One night, I listened to her breathing and cataloged our habits. Her left foot sticks out from the sheet. She sleeps on her side facing the door. She wakes quickly at strange noises. Knowledge is not the same as intimacy. It's a shadow play of it. The closest I came to naming the shift was a Sunday evening when we were both doing admin, organizing emails, dealing with small tasks no one wants. She kept flipping between tabs, eyes quick, fingers tapping that impatient rhythm of someone who cares. "You're very alive lately," I said, intending admiration, hearing insecurity. She paused and looked at me, really looked, like the old days. "I'm trying to be," she said. "It feels like the right time." Then she added, cautious, "For both of us." I wanted to ask what alive meant to her now, whether it had coordinates I could find. Instead I said, "I'm happy for you." The words tasted like aspirin. If you're looking for a single clue, a lipstick on a collar, a restaurant receipt wedged under a car seat, it doesn't exist here. What I had was a weather forecast that kept being accurate, a pressure change, a warmer wind, the sense of rain that never quite started. I told myself this was what a long marriage looks like in the middle, not the desert, not the feast, just the long road where you walk side by side and occasionally forget to point out the scenery. The last thing I'll tell you about before everything tilted is embarrassingly small. A Tuesday morning, ordinary as toast. Laura poured coffee into the travel mug I usually take, the stainless steel one with a dent from a clumsy airport run years ago. She hesitated, then switched it for a newer one, wiping the rim with a napkin. "This one seals better," she said. It was such a careful kindness that my throat tightened. When I kissed her cheek, she smelled like that old perfume in rain. She smiled, but not toward me. Her smile looked inward, like a candle you cup with your hand to keep it from the wind. I carried the new mug to the train and, for the first time, wondered if we weren't so much drifting apart as drifting toward different versions of ourselves. Versions that might not know how to hold hands. The night it became real wasn't cinematic. No raised voices, no trembling hands holding evidence. It began with silence, the kind that fills a room and makes the air feel crowded. It was a Thursday, early autumn. Laura came home later than usual, hair damp from a drizzle, cheeks slightly flushed. She set her bag down quietly, like she didn't want to wake something. I was at the dining table, working on a report I'd already finished twice, more typing than thinking. She looked at me, smiled faintly, said, "You're still at it?" and went to change. Something in her tone, light, effortless, made me pause. Not suspicion exactly, but distance. The kind you hear when someone's heart is elsewhere, rehearsing a different conversation. When she returned, She poured herself a glass of wine, sat opposite me, and began talking about her day, not work, not people, but impressions. It rained, but not annoyingly. Michael made a joke about how the office coffee tastes like decisions made by committee. She laughed softly, a private laugh, almost tender. And there it was again, his name. Casual, dropped into the rhythm of her day like punctuation. She didn't notice me freeze. She kept talking. I watched the way her hand circled the glass, how her eyes softened at some memory she didn't share. My chest tightened with something worse than jealousy, recognition. I'd once been the man she spoke about that way. I didn't say anything that night. Not out of cowardice, though I suppose it looked like that. I just didn't know what to ask that wouldn't sound like an interrogation. Are you happy? Felt too broad. Do you love him? Felt premature. Do you still love me? Felt like begging. Instead, I said, I miss you. She looked up, startled, as if I'd touched something fragile. I'm right here, she said quietly. But we both knew she wasn't. For the next week, I tried to collect myself like someone sweeping glass, carefully, but never completely. I cooked dinner twice, bought her favorite tea, sent her a link to a concert I thought she'd like. She thanked me for each gesture like a stranger receiving kindness from a neighbor. It wasn't that she stopped caring. It was that she cared differently, gently, distantly, as though I were a man she didn't want to hurt. That's the part they never tell you. When love shifts, it doesn't turn into hate first. It turns into mercy. On Wednesday, I met her outside her office for lunch. She seemed surprised but pleased. We ate at a small cafe nearby. She told me about a new campaign proposal. I told her about a client who couldn't make decisions. It almost felt normal until she glanced at her phone and smiled. Not the polite smile she used for texts from coworkers. Something smaller, involuntary. She caught herself, turned the screen face down. Sorry, she said. I nodded. But something in me hardened. The rest of the afternoon passed in a fog. At work, I caught myself rereading the same paragraph of an email over and over. The thought kept circling. What would I do if it's true? There was no plan. No fantasy of revenge, no confrontation. Just the dull, nauseous weight of imagining the details. The first touch, the first secret, the quiet decision to lie by omission. That evening, she was home before me, cooking. The smell of garlic and rosemary filled the kitchen, familiar and disarming. You're in a good mood, I said. She smiled, eyes a little tired but content. Just felt like making something nice. And for a second, I let myself believe it. That maybe we'd both imagined the distance. That maybe life had simply weathered us a bit, and we could smooth it out. We ate, talked about movies, even laughed. I caught a glimpse of who we used to be, partners, friends, co-conspirators against the dullness of adulthood. But later, when she showered, I saw her phone on the counter, screen lighting up with a message preview. Michael, still thinking about today. My body went cold, but my hands didn't move. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The message itself was enough. It wasn't explicit. It didn't have to be. The tenderness in those 4 words said more than any confession could. I sat there for a long time, the sound of running water behind the bathroom door, my reflection flickering in the dark window. I thought about how people always talk about betrayal like it's a single act, a sharp wound. But this was erosion. Slow, patient, almost kind. When she came out, hair damp, towel around her shoulders, she looked at me and froze. Maybe she saw it on my face. Maybe she'd been expecting this moment. Laura, I said softly, are you happy? Her lips parted, then closed. A long pause. I don't know, she said finally. I'm trying to be. I nodded. With him? She flinched, then sighed. It's not. She stopped. I didn't mean for it to happen. The old cliché. But when she said it, it didn't sound like an excuse. It sounded like grief. She sat down across from me, the towel slipping off one shoulder. I didn't plan it. I started feeling like myself again, and it scared me how much I missed that. There it was, the truth, plain and cruel. I thought you were happy, I said. I was comfortable, she replied. We were comfortable. But comfort can start to feel like sleep. I wanted to argue, to remind her of everything we'd built, the years, the loyalty, the quiet mornings, the shared history. But all of it sounded small in the face of her honesty. She was crying now, quietly, wiping tears with the back of her hand. I never stopped caring about you, she said. It's just, something broke, and I didn't know how to fix it anymore. I felt something loosen in me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. Because she wasn't wrong. I had seen it breaking and chosen to look away. We sat there for what felt like hours. No shouting, no ultimatums. Just two people sifting through the wreckage of what used to be a life. When she finally asked, What do you want me to do? I didn't have an answer. I don't know, I said. I think I need to understand who we are now. She nodded, eyes red. Me too. That night, we slept in the same bed, but turned in opposite directions. Like two sides of the same coin, minted by the same fire, worn by time. I didn't dream. I just lay awake, listening to the rhythm of her breathing, wondering how something so familiar could feel so foreign. In the morning, she left early. I watched from the window as she walked down the street, her hair catching the sun. She looked lighter. I couldn't tell if it was relief or freedom. Maybe both. I poured coffee into the old dinted mug, the one she'd stopped using, and realized it still held heat. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. No screaming, no ultimatums, no grand gestures. Just the soft aftermath, like the air after a thunderstorm, heavy but clean. Laura didn't move out, not immediately. We told ourselves we needed time to think. In truth, we were both too afraid of what the silence would sound like if we were alone. We lived like polite strangers. Shared meals without conversation, brushed past each other in the hallway with murmured apologies. Sometimes, late at night, I heard her crying softly in the guest room. Other nights, she would wake to find me sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. There's no manual for this part, the slow, aching stillness after truth has been spoken. You just exist. You learn how to breathe again without resentment in every exhale. For a while, I thought I could fix it. That if I was calm, reasonable, forgiving enough, we could rebuild something. I even looked up therapists, booked a session. She came once, then said it felt like dissecting a corpse, technical, detached, too late. I couldn't argue with her. I started walking after work, long routes through the city. It became a ritual, headphones in, no destination. Sometimes I'd end up near her office, pretending it was coincidence. Once, I saw her outside, talking to Michael. It wasn't dramatic, no touching, no kiss. Just two people laughing softly in the amber light of evening. She looked peaceful. I didn't feel anger then. Just an odd, hollow acceptance. You can't be furious forever. Your body won't let you. Eventually, pain burns itself out, and what's left is something quieter, resignation, maybe even compassion. That night, when she came home, I asked her if she'd seen him. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. How often? She took a breath. Not as much anymore. Because of me? Because of everything, she said. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the one I believed. A few days later, we sat down to talk. Really talk. Not about logistics or schedules, but about us. The conversation stretched into the early hours, carried by exhaustion and honesty. She told me that what started with Michael wasn't about him, not really. "He just saw me," she said. "Not as a wife, not as someone's responsibility. Just me." I wanted to be angry, but I understood. When you live with someone long enough, you stop seeing them as a person in motion. They become part of your landscape, familiar, dependable, unmoving. I had done that to her. "I didn't fall out of love with you," she continued. "I fell out of being seen by you." I let the words hang in the air. They hurt because they were true. Then she looked at me, eyes red but steady. "Why didn't you fight for me earlier?" I didn't know how to answer. Because fighting felt pointless? Because I didn't realize I was losing her until it was too late? Or because some part of me was also tired of pretending that comfort was happiness? "I think I forgot how," I said. She nodded, as if she'd expected that. For a few weeks, we tried to coexist. We shared dinners, sometimes even jokes. There was no intimacy, but there was tenderness, the kind you reserve for someone who once knew your entire map. She'd bring me coffee in the morning. I'd ask if she'd eaten. Little kindnesses that felt like ghosts of something better. One night, she told me she was thinking of taking some time away, a trip to her sister's cabin up north. "Just to clear my head," she said. I could see she'd already decided. "When are you leaving?" I asked. "Saturday. Are you coming back?" She hesitated. "I hope so." That was the most honest thing she'd said in months. The morning she left, I carried her bag to the car. It wasn't heavy. She hugged me, brief, trembling, and whispered, "I'm sorry." I wanted to say for what, but the answer didn't matter. We both had our share of apologies. When her car disappeared down the street, I went back inside. The apartment felt larger, colder. The silence had shaped now. For days, I went through motions, work, dinner, sleep, but something was shifting inside me. The anger had evaporated, the grief had dulled. What remained was a strange kind of clarity. I started remembering the early years, the first apartment with a leaky faucet, the nights we stayed up talking about everything and nothing, the way she used to rest her head on my chest when she couldn't sleep. Those memories didn't hurt anymore. They just existed, like old photographs that no longer belong to you but still make you smile. One evening, I sat on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker. I realized I wasn't waiting for her to come back. Not really. I was waiting to feel like myself again. And slowly I did. I reached out to a few friends I drifted from, joined a weekend running group, started cooking meals I actually liked instead of what was easiest. I wasn't happy, not yet, but I was alive in a way I hadn't been in years. Sometimes I'd think about her, not with bitterness, but with something close to gratitude. She'd forced me to confront the quiet failure I'd built my life around. 2 months later, she called, said she wanted to meet. We chose a cafe halfway between our places. She looked different, calmer, lighter, as if she'd spent time learning how to breathe again. We talked for over an hour. About work, friends, the small details of life. She told me she and Michael had stopped seeing each other. "It wasn't sustainable," she said. "It was never meant to last." I didn't gloat, didn't comfort. I just listened. Then she asked, "Do you hate me?" I thought for a long time before answering. "No," I said. "But I don't know if I can love you the same way again." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "That's fair." We sat there quietly, two people who had built something, broken it, and were now trying to figure out what fragments were worth keeping. Before she left, she reached across the table, placed her hand over mine. "I'm glad we had what we did," she said. "So am I," I replied. And I meant it. I watched her walk away, her figure blending into the late afternoon crowd. For the first time, I didn't feel loss, just acceptance. Love, I realized, isn't always meant to last forever. Sometimes it's meant to teach you something about who you were, and who you still have a chance to become. I went home, poured a cup of coffee into that same old dented mug, and sat by the window. Outside, the sky was clearing after rain. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the storm to pass. I was already standing in the sunlight,